I got rid of my clicky pen for tonight.
Charlie and I told him I would take it from him if he had it.
I'm going by my phone.
Yeah, that looks a little fast.
Not ready here?
Nope, Janice won't make it.
So can I just take direction from you to file suit?
Yeah.
And then, oh, Mike.
Mike was here for this afternoon, but I don't know.
How much did it cost to tear one?
That was just abatement.
Oh, they cleaned it up.
Yeah, they cleaned it up so we didn't have to go that route.
This guy's like, how Cruise Mac now on it?
I'm thinking it's probably $4,000 or $5,000.
Look at that Cruise Mac, he goes in, a couple hours later, it's gone. He turns around and sells it for $30. It's a good thing,
Watch it was to make some profit there, but if they don't want to do it, that you don't even have to acquire property for a public purpose anymore.
We're just not in the business of that. That's where,
I'd like to see that way someday.
because it adds to the tax base for the village.
Yeah, and you could almost set up a quasi like local land bank in that regard.
Right.
You know?
7 o'clock, I was calling you for join me at
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Benson? Trustee Gunther?
Here.
Pro Tem Jackson?
Here.
Trustee Mead?
Present.
Trustee Pelfrey?
Here.
Trustee Varian? Present hour.
Next item on the agenda, public comments. Anybody? Go ahead, Ron.
Okay, from the Board of Commissioners, delinquent taxes, the Vanderbilt County Treasurer, Tricia Nesbitt, paid the local units of government nearly $11 million for delinquent taxes. This payment is provided for each of the new tax dollars which were unpaid by property owners. And eventually the property owners will either pay that undue taxes or the property will be sold to pay that obligation. So you can continue with the funds that you spread, you get the total amount every year. Radio towers, the Board of Commissioners approved a replacement for 2 radio towers, fire and EMS project. One new tower will be located at the fairgrounds in Hartford, and the other will be located at Columbia Township Fire Station. The cost of the phase of the project is $347,000, and that's paid out of the funds that they do have. That's all I have.
Any more? Go ahead. John, if anybody who's vaccinated, completely vaccinated, they don't have to wear a mask, just let you know, if you don't want to. They're completely vaccinated.
I'm completely vaccinated in March.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm talking about the other ones.
If you have the vaccine, you don't have to wear your mask.
No,
That's
no.
what it is.
You can choose to wear it if you would like to, but you don't have to.
I'm not gonna force anybody, if they're completely vaccinated.
Thank you, Council, for giving me the opportunity to come to you today. I'm coming to ask you if you would support a YMCA center in Decatur, Michigan. The reason I come to you is because I just moved here from Lansing, Michigan. I had a Y membership. I had to cancel it because Decatur is part of the Kalamazoo board for the YMCA, and it's outside the jurisdiction of the Lansing YMCA. So then, if I wanted to continue my membership, I'd have to contact the Kalamazoo YMCA board, and I think that being a resident in Decatur, that's a good drive. Plus, I know people who are members of the YMCA in Kalamazoo, and they say often when they go, it's full. So after they drive the half an hour or so. So there's a Y in Kalamazoo, and then the closest one other than Kalamazoo is Niles. So I believe that Decatur is a good spot. The Y promotes community, it promotes family involvement, and there's a lot of good things about a YMCA center. And so what I'm asking all of you is, as I pursue more information about opening up a Y closer to where I live, and preferably in Decatur, if I could suggest that the Y could be located, if there is a new Y, it could be located in Decatur. Now, when I asked the information to see why it can't be located closer, they informed me that the only way it would be located closer is if I had the township on board with that new facility. So as I pursue trying to figure all of these avenues out, I'm trying to first let you all know that I will be mentioning Decatur as a YMCA center. Second, I don't know what they want from Decatur, and then at that point, then I want you all not to act like you don't know nothing about it. So that's all I have to say, and I don't know the next steps to take for you all to say that you, maybe all that I need to do right now is to let you know what I'm trying to do. And at that, the next point then would be having to come back to present you with information that they've given me that I need you to take action with. Okay?
Thank you.
That's why I was here tonight, just want you to know.
Thank you.
So what is your name, ma'am?
My name is Patricia Musco Valley, M-U-S-C-O, V as in Victor, A-L-L-E-Y. And I've taken up residence in my mother's home, Evelyn Gibson. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments? Okay, no more comments, move to the next item on the agenda. Okay, consent agenda additions, deletions to the agenda, then we have a couple of topics we gotta add.
Yeah, I needed to add, under new business, H 413 West Delaware, MRTMA application.
The next item I want to add is executive search, you know, service, you know, we're gonna talk about that.
Under item I?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, there's no more additions, deletions. I need approval of the agenda as amended, and I need approval of the minutes from May 3rd, 2021, regular meeting. Minutes from the May 26th, 2021 special meeting. And the bills are in a total of $117,555.59.
I'll make a motion to approve A through E.
All right.
I'll second that.
Trustee Lee, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Do you have any correspondence?
I do not actually have any correspondence today.
Any officers report? Any questions for the village attorney, DPW report, chief report, clerk treasurer report, the village manager report? Any questions from the council? There's no questions from the council. Do you want to comment on anything?
Yeah, a couple things. Obviously with COVID-19, you can see we've changed our policy now. For access to the building as well as for meetings, it's for anybody that's fully vaccinated. We do not require a mask. This would extend to all of our staff as well. So it's up to individual staff members to decide. I have been fully vaccinated, but I'm choosing to wear a mask, I think, to try to set a good example and things. But if somebody doesn't want to, you don't have to anymore. The fiscal year 21 audit will take place the week of July 12th. Kim and I are working with the representatives from Gabbard and Company to get that ready to go. More than likely this year it will be more of a remote operation like it was last year. I think they really got that down to a science pretty well, and Kim and I don't mind it because it allows us to upload our databases to them, and allows them to be able to do a lot of the work without having to necessarily rely as much on paper reviews of things, so it actually helps out quite a bit and works with our workflow pretty well. A lot of our things is more electronic now, so that makes sense. Pursuant to the special meeting, we did apply for the Category B grant and CDBG grants that were discussed then. I have not found out the disposition of those yet, but I will alert everybody as soon as I know one way or the other. The Edgar Bergen building is something we are still working on. That finally has a closing date for June 17th, so we should be getting that finally sold soon. And the last thing I'll touch on is with the DDA. We had a DDA meeting during the month of May and talked about a couple topics. The two primary ones were the downtown flower program and the park. For flowers this year, the DDA will be partnering with Paulette's Potting Shed. We've actually taken our pots over there to have them planted, and then they'll bring them back. So it'll be kind of a professionally done operation this year, and we think that'll result in a better appearance downtown for all of our flowers. They're working on new banners for all of our streetlights downtown as well. And then with the DDA park, an item that came up a couple times during council meetings was the maintenance of the parks. So we had a good discussion with the DDA. The village's position at that point was that essentially with the maintenance for the parks, we felt that some sort of a reimbursement for the village's time and effort for the work over there should be completed. So the DDA agreed that for all the time and materials Public Works puts into the park, we would be reimbursed on the part of the DDA for that. So I think that's been something we've been talking about for a couple of years now, and we finally got that resolved.
There's nothing under unfinished business, new business, the village manager letter of resignation and transition.
Yeah, so this is probably one of the hardest things I've done in quite some time. Did a lot of soul searching throughout this process, but obviously with the letter that's attached, I'm submitting my resignation as village manager effective for August 31st. I did a lot of thinking about my time with the village, and it's amazing how quickly 5 years goes by. That would be I think it'd be the start of the 6th year next month. But I'm really proud of everything that we've accomplished over the last 5 years. And as I talk about in the letter, the reason for my departure is the opportunity to pursue a position in county government. I'll be accepting the Deputy County Administrator role for Cass County. I do want to make it clear I wasn't actively looking for any job opportunities. They had approached me about this, and after looking at it and talking with them, I understood that it was a good opportunity, and not a lot of those come up, quite like this one. So as I talked about this with them, I expressed a desire that I wanted to do everything I could to try to help the village through the transition period that would ensue. So I really didn't want to see an abrupt departure that would result in any tumultuousness here with the village. So rather than kind of a standard 30-day notice, I discussed the possibility of trying to extend that out. So that way I could help with the transition for the village, whether that's, training staff or working with a new manager in an interim period to try to help make sure that everything that we're working on gets resolved and we don't leave loose ends. Cass was willing to work with me on this, so what I would hope to do would be to extend my notice through the end of August, and then through that I would work 4 days here at the village at a minimum of 32 hours a week, and then just 1 day over at Cass County until the full notice period. That allows me to do some training, but the bulk of my efforts and work hours would be here at the village to try to help make sure the transition goes smoothly. And I think that gives the village additional time to try to work through what the next steps would be also. I do want to note that with respect to the reduced hours, even though there's a salary in place for the village manager, we do pay that on an hourly basis. So if I wasn't supplementing the 32 hours with, say, vacation time or any sort of personal time, I just wouldn't be paid for that. So it's not like the village would be paying for something they weren't getting in that regard. It would just be my hours worked and any earned time off that I would use. So I guess I wanted to assure everybody that, you know, through the end of August, my primary priority here would be working to try to ensure a smooth transition as much as possible and ensure that I've done everything I can to work with our department heads and our staff to make sure that this goes as smoothly as it possibly can.
Any questions from the council? Now, the only question I have is, as long as we agree on this with both parties, there would not be an issue with the contract, is it? Because the contract states if both parties agree,
Right.
Yep.
the change, then everything should be fine.
I think so.
Okay. Everybody's in agreement that Matt will do 4 days here on Monday, any issues with that? Anybody has an issue? If there is no issues, then I need a motion to approve village manager letter of resignation and transition plan as presented.
I'll make the motion to approve the village manager letter of resignation and transition plan as presented.
I'll support that.
Roll call, please.
Yep, trustee Benson, trustee Gunther,
Yes.
Pro Tem Jackson,
Yes.
trustee Mead,
Yes.
trustee Pelfrey,
Yes.
trustee Varian, President Alvar.
Yes, motion carries. The next item is the solid waste contract selection.
Yeah, so at the February regular meeting, we had reviewed a final draft of the 2021 waste removal request for proposals. That was approved for posting. Subsequently, we did release that, and bids were sought for services. The services would commence September 1st. The RFP closed on May 14th, and Kim and I completed the bid opening on May 17th. Following that, we completed a final bid tab, which we've attached here. I do have all of the proposals if anybody wanted to look through them, but the bid tab kind of gives the real high-level view, which would really be the unit cost, cost per month per unit, and any other sort of fees that would be there. So when you look at that, basically the way the cost broke down, waste management came in at the lowest cost. It was $15.90 for 2021 and $16.46 in 2022, and essentially that goes up to each year up to about $18.25 in 2025. Republic Services came in pretty close. It was about a 10-cent difference, so 16 for 2021, 16.56 in 2022, and then the final pricing for that 5-year term would be 18.36. We also received a bid from Bestway. Bestway's was a little bit unique in that the initial starting price was higher per unit, but they didn't have a preset increase per year. It wasn't a percentage per year or something like that. They basically tie that to the consumer price index. That can have some benefits if the CPI remains low, but the challenge would be is that we don't know from year to year what that might be. They built in a maximum of 5%. So for kind of illustrative purposes, we showcased kind of an estimate of the 2% we've seen pretty much on average over the last couple of years. And then also showed at the maximum increase of 5% what that would look like. And that's kind of where things get a little bit interesting, is if it ended up being on that higher end of the scale, the pricing is quite a bit higher than what you would see from the other two carriers. With that, Waste Management and Republic, all three of them really have some additional fees involved. With Waste Management, it's the same sort of recycling surcharge we've seen under the previous contract. So basically the way this would work is if the cost for recycling processes exceed $150 per ton, then what happens is the excess cost above $150 or $155 per ton are assessed on a per unit basis based on the total tonnage from the prior month divided by the number of units. So for example, if we had, say, 4 tons of garbage at 160, well then you've got that amount above 155 would be, you know, $5 times 4 tons, that's $20 divided by the number of units you're looking at. I think it breaks down to like 3.5 cents per unit. But again, the important thing here is I think that only comes into play if the recycling costs exceed 150. As long as they're 150 or lower, there would be no surcharge. To date, I don't think we've seen any recycling surcharges on any of our bills so far. So it's just one of those things that, depending on the economic conditions, could happen. Republic Service and Best Way both have fuel surcharges. So there's no extra cost for recycling, but the way that that would work is for them, if fuel costs exceed a certain threshold, there's an assessment per the unit cost. So for example, with Republic Service, if diesel fuel exceeds $4 per gallon, the surcharge on a bill would be 4 cents per residence per month for every 10 cents above $4. Best Way was $3.50, and it was 1 cent for every 4 cents a gallon above $3.50. The only other thing I guess I wanted to highlight with Best Way was they had a Waste Buster option, which was a 64-gallon container versus the normal 96-gallon, and that came out to $1 less per month. But even then, for Best Way, if you're looking at 2021, $1 off of their $17.52 cost, you're still looking at $16.52 for a 1/3 smaller container. So, I guess from my take, I think a lot of it comes down to really looking at probably the two main proposals would be Waste Management and Republic Services, excuse me. Overall, I think the advantage to staying with Waste Management as a carrier is that we've had a long relationship with them. They're familiar with the village, and they were with us as we worked through the transition to change in billing. Republic Services does have a few unique things that do separate them a little bit. In particular, Republic Services is proposing that they would track individual addresses and have a call line that would work a little bit, in some ways potentially a little bit more advantageous. Right now with Waste Management, though we've had pretty good service, when we've run into challenges, it kind of ends up being Evelyn gets a lot of phone calls or emails, forwards those up to Waste Management. They eventually get to the route manager, and then communication comes back to Evelyn, and so there's a lot of kind of intermediary communications that take place. Public Services is kind of proposing that we eliminate that sort of a premise and have each address tracked for services, and then if there's an issue, they would call that line directly. And then they'd be able to say, okay, yep, where's your address, and then they would be able to handle that themselves. So that could potentially reduce some of the time that Evelyn would have to put into the process. The other, I guess, kind of minor difference would be is that with Republic Services, well, I guess it's not minor. It depends on, I guess, how much people recycle, but under Waste Management, I think we have a smaller recycling container. I think it's one of those more 64-gallon containers. With Republic Service, they would propose a 96-gallon container, so it'd be the same size as your trash container. I know we've had a few residents come in over the years and say they'd like to see more recycling options. It's not more frequent terms of service. This would still be bi-weekly recycling and weekly trash service, but having a little more capacity could provide some benefits for residents as a whole. So I think that really comes down to looking at, I guess, those two primary things in terms of the customer service element and the recycling component. The pricing is pretty similar in that I don't know that there's it's really a huge difference either way. Let's see.
Questions from the council?
Yeah.
Any preferences? Anybody else have any comments?
I do like the idea of the larger recycling option. Because the current is never big enough.
So everybody's okay with the approval, I need approval of approve the bid from Republic Services and authorize the contract to be entered to provide for waste removal and recycling services beginning September 1st, 2021 and run through August 31st, 2025. Need a motion for that. Trustee Pelfrey, need a second?
I'll second that.
Trustee Gunther, I need a roll call, please.
Yep. Trustee Benson, Trustee Gunther,
Yes.
Pro Tem Jackson,
Yes.
Trustee Mead,
No.
Trustee Pelfrey,
Yes.
Trustee Bryan, President Auer,
Yes, we're 4-2.
4-3.
Okay, motion carries. Second item, is 4th of July road closure.
Yeah, so resolution 2021-06 authorizes the road closures for the 4th of July parade. This year's parade will be a little bit different, being that 4th of July is on a Sunday. The VFW has pushed the start of the parade back to noon. So this allows for religious services and things like that to be completed before the parade would start. So as such, we would generally start the road closures about a half an hour before the parade to a half an hour afterwards. So with that, it would be basically 11:30 to 2 o'clock. And that would be M51 between Mills and Seneca, North Phelps Street from Delaware to the North Village limits, St. Mary's from Mills to East Street, Mills from West Delaware to West St. Mary's, and then East Street from East Delaware to East St. Mary's. And then if the council approves of that, I will complete the MDOT permit for the M51 portion.
There's no questions, I need a motion to approve resolution 2021-006 as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-006 as presented.
Trustee Jackson needs a second.
I'll second that.
Trustee Mead, need a roll call, please?
Yep. Trustee Benson, trustee Gunther,
Yes.
Pro Tem Jackson,
Yes.
trustee Mead,
Yes.
trustee Pelfrey,
Yes.
trustee Brand, and President Hour.
Yes, motion carries. Next item is DPW team leader.
Yeah, so over the last 3 years, the village council has taken a large number of steps in adjusting wages across a lot of the village, DPW being one of them. So one of the big things I think that we discussed throughout all of this was looking at starting wages for DPW staff members, as well as looking at the incentives for various licenses, including CDL and water and sewer licensure. We have increased now the total number of DPW staff from 4 full-time and 1 part-time now to 5 full-time employees. If you think back to a couple years ago, we had Mike Mott also, who served as kind of a number 2 in that department. So with the turnover we've seen with Public Works, we really haven't had that. So Jimmy and I have talked about this and looking at the current positions in our staffing, and we would like to propose a slight alteration for your consideration. Tim Schroyer has been a member of the DPW now for 8 years. He has a thorough knowledge of the operations of the department and various tasks that must be completed. He's adept in using all the equipment necessary for those tasks, and has recently served as a leader of the department on days when Jimmy is on vacation, attending seminars, or potentially, in transit on village business. So Jimmy and I have discussed this, and we'd like to see potentially a team leader be named. Again, this would kind of formalize that role of giving us somebody that could serve as a supervisor, so to speak, in Jimmy's absence. And we think that with Tim's experience here with the department, he's demonstrated the ability to do this and has a thorough knowledge of all of the things that we do here with the department as well. So with that, we'd like to propose that change and have that be accompanied by a 50-cent increase in the hourly compensation for Tim. I think when you consider the length of service for Tim, his knowledge of the department, and his flexibility and ability to use all of the equipment and really oversee things, I think it makes a lot of sense for us to look at this for the DPW.
Any questions from the council?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment.
Sure.
I think we need the team leader position, but I think it should be approve the team leader position, and then you could promote Tim to that position with a raise.
Okay.
Because if we do it like this, then if Tim leaves, then we're gonna have to go through this process again, because we would have to approve a new team leader. Where if
Okay.
we approve a position of a team leader, then that's out there, and then you can put whoever you want in it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just do it this way now.
Yeah, we could just approve for the creation of the DPW team leader position, and then, you're right, then we could appoint Tim to do that. That makes sense.
Then you just do whatever you ask.
Yeah, that works.
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion to approve the creation of a DPW team leader position.
Need a second?
I'll support.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item, Midwest Festival 2021.
Yes, so it has been almost 2 years now since the last Midwest Festival was held here in town. Obviously, with the challenges of COVID-19 last year, there was no way to hold the event safely, so it was canceled. This year, we talked about this a few months ago on a smaller scale, and tentative approval was given. I think when you look at the guidance from MDHHS and the CDC, things have loosened up to a point where I think, especially with outdoor events, there's a lot of flexibility in being able to do that and to hold those events safely. In accordance with the changes that have been issued, I really don't see a reason why we can't continue with it as was proposed. So as discussed in February, the goal of the event was to encompass just the 100 block of North Phelps, so it would be similar to what it was back in 2018. And then to continue with the planning of the event, the MLCC application would need to be approved for them to be able to get the license to be able to hold any sort of liquor sales and things like that that would come through the event. So I believe it would be, is it July 31st, is that correct? I think it was July 31st from 3 to 11 was the timing?
3 to 10.
Okay, 3 to 10, okay. And then out of curiosity, do you guys have a limit on the number of people or an idea of what you're expecting?
We're limited tickets to 300. In the past, it's been 15 to 18, but on the side of caution,
Sure.
with this whole thing, we're gonna still limit it to 300. Now, that being said, some of the sponsors will be comp tickets, so in all likelihood, there'll be up to 400 people, but we're limiting ticket sales to 300, just
Okay.
a small amount.
Yeah, so, I think altogether, even when we did this same area last time, I think it was close to like 1,000 people, somewhere in that vicinity is what we had talked about, or 1,500, I think, just in this small block downtown. So, I think when you consider the number of tickets they're looking at, I think it's still in line with trying to make sure they're doing what needs to be done for safety.
Any questions from the council?
Chief, you?
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, please.
Well, thank you. In the past, we've had meetings.
Yep.
I know nothing about this one.
I got a lot of things to go over with the chief.
Yes, you do, because I have to sign off on the liquor control end of this, and if we're going to approve this, we're gonna have to get some details, please. I don't want to be left
No.
hanging out and then be asked to sign something, so
Yep.
please.
Yes.
So are we good? You guys get together after this? Is that what you're asking, something to do?
It's gonna take more than after this.
So we can approve this, I know we can
Yeah,
approve it.
I'm fine with approval as long as I have a commitment from Kevin that we're gonna have some meetings.
Okay.
And your signature along with you guys' approval has to be on this form, so
Correct.
I have to have both of them.
Yeah, so we can do the approval here, and then Chief and I can work to make sure we get the rest of it we need.
All right, well, if there's no questions, I need a motion to authorize the MLCC application for Midwest Festival 2021 as presented. With that correction time, the 3 to 10.
3 to 10, yes.
I make the motion to authorize the MLCC application by final gravity for Midwest Fest 2021.
Okay, Trustee Jackson.
I'll second that.
Trustee Mead, roll call please.
Yep, trustee Benson, trustee Gunther,
Yes.
Pro Tem Jackson,
Yes.
trustee Mead,
Yes.
trustee Pelfrey,
Yes.
trustee Brand, President Howard.
Yes, motion carries. Next item is Decatur, Hamilton, Kiwara, and oh, Neptune, I'm sorry, okay, the Neptune 360 and the meeting equipment, I already slashed that, I want to get done. Yeah, okay, Neptune 360 and the meeting equipment, okay.
Yes, so with the Neptune 360 and reading equipment, kind of what this stems from is that obviously with water services and things, we end up procuring new water meters as it becomes necessary. We've ordered some new water meters over the last year, particularly the last 6 months, that we needed to install for replacements. And we've run into a challenge with a few of them, and the idea behind this quote is to address that. Now, I guess one thing I wanted to note was that we were planning to get a new reading equipment. I believe it was 2023, so we're a little bit earlier than that, but one of the things I guess that goes into this a lot of the time is looking at the age of the equipment and going, okay, well, when do we think we'd want to get a new one? Some of that can be influenced by software and the companies that we work with, and we really don't always have necessarily a big handle on when those changes might come up. So we talked with Ferguson, who provides most of our equipment supplies, and found that for a few of the meters we've installed already, while they will work for remote reads, we cannot go out and utilize our existing readers to be able to pull any sort of usage data on like an hourly basis or anything like that. So normally, Jimmy and the guys can go to a meter if there's a question on high usage, and be able to get kind of an hour-by-hour printout of when water was used. I think each day for, is it the last 90 days with our current meters? And then that way we can try to help a resident track down, okay, if there's a leak or if there's another issue, when is that happening? And that can sometimes lead us to figure out what the problem might be. So we found out through trying to do one of these that it wasn't working, and we said, well, what the heck's going on? So we reached out to Ferguson, and they said, oh, there was a change in the Neptune meters where they still have the RF functionality, but the technology's changed a little bit, so you would have to have a different reading equipment to be able to do the same tasks that we do now. So there are a couple advantages to this, to moving earlier though, is that the existing software they have, I think, is slated for one more update in the next month or so, and then they are going to deprecate that software. So it'll still work, but they won't be updating any further that software at all. So if there's a problem or if there's little things, you know, you're just kind of stuck dealing with the software as it is. What they're moving to now is a new software system called Neptune 360. The advantage to this is that it doesn't require any sort of software running on our local servers here. It all actually communicates right to the cloud. And it gives a much more visual representation. Now when we do an import for meters, it's very much a text-based system. We have to read the handheld, put it into the base, that gets synced up to a server here. We've had issues sometimes where something doesn't communicate properly and the file doesn't get loaded here right, and we end up troubleshooting that. This eliminates all of those sorts of issues, and it does actually expand our capability. With this particular system that they're proposing, it would eliminate the kind of some of the handheld meter functions that we have. So right now, there's a keyboard on it, it's got a screen, and it's not always the easiest and most intuitive thing to work with. We still have to then bring the thing back, load it into our software to pull up the usage reports we're looking for. With this, there's two pieces that would work. So there's the software itself, and then there's a larger reader. The reason for the two readers is that one is designed for bulk collections. So that when you put in the truck, you load up your routes that you're going to go on, and it can communicate with, I think, up to 50 different signals at the same time. So as you're driving around town, as it picks up one, it logs it and logs it and logs it. And it can do that very quickly. With the belt clip one, it can only do one at a time. So if you only went with that one, it would take a much longer time, and I think Jimmy would be driving around town at about 2 miles an hour if we're lucky, trying to get all the readings. So that's not the most intuitive solution. However, where that belt clip meter does come in really handy is that that particular one can sync up to our iPads that we have for Public Works. So we actually have a Neptune, or we would have a Neptune 360 app that would be on them. It would sync up to the belt clip reader that we would have. We could go to a meter, pull the information on it, and then Public Works can actually get right on the tablet and look at all the information right there, right on the spot. So it saves time in terms of having to come up to the office and read reports. And it's really convenient. Anybody, whether they're using their cell phone or their tablet, would have access to the application and be able to do a lot of work out in the field without kind of struggling to use a tablet that we are a little handheld with a keyboard that's like typing on an old school phone that way. It's not always easy. So I think this is definitely the way to go. I mean, the downside, of course, is that we had planned on this a couple years out. But with everything playing out the way it is with Ferguson, it really doesn't make a lot of sense for us to start moving to more and more meters where we can't actually pull the information that we need. And then essentially what happens here is that this would move up a little bit on our capital improvement projects list to this year. We would resolve it now. And then we would remove it obviously from the list for 2 years from now. So it accelerates it a little bit, but the bonus is that for existing customers that are moving to this software, they would waive any setup costs that would come into it. So if we didn't act before the year was over, it's about a $2,000 cost for setup fees. There's additional cost for training. And then I believe we're getting a 15% discount off of the first year of service and then a 10% off of the second year of service. This is a 3-year deal. You know, the normal cost you can see there for year 3 is about $19.93. So if you look at year 1 and year 2 there versus that cost, you're saving roughly about $600 in year 1 and about $500 in year 2. So altogether, by moving earlier, it saves us about $3,500 versus waiting. So I think when you take all that into account, it does make sense to move ahead earlier. Ironically, we do have one of the meters that is a problem meter here in this regard. Somebody did come in and wanted us to read it and try to figure out what was going on with the meter. So without being able to do this, we would have a hard time being able to satisfy that.
What kind of training do you need, Jimmy, with this? Is the training included in this, whatever the change?
Yeah,
Yeah,
talking with the person from Ferguson, they will train me, or a couple of us anyways on it. I mean, it took me a few years to learn this one. I'm not excited about changing it, you know. We gotta do it, I mean, eventually.
I don't know, I'm just curious. So, if there is no, I need a motion to approve the quote for Ferguson as presented.
I'll make the motion to approve the quote for Ferguson as presented.
Need a second? Trustee Jackson, trustee Godfrey, roll call please.
Trustee Benson, trustee Gunther,
Yes.
pro tem Jackson,
Yes.
trustee Mead,
Yes.
trustee Pelfrey,
Yes.
trustee Brand, president Howard.
Yes, motion carries. Next item is declare Hamilton QR and declare Hamilton Fire Department annual meeting on that budgets.
Yes, so the annual meeting for the Quick Response and Fire Administration Board will be held on June 28th at 7 p.m. We were a little bit different last year in that the municipalities approved the budget and tax levy resolutions at our regular meetings in June. Again, that was because of concerns over COVID-19. Now that things have calmed a little bit and you know, we've gotten used to how this process works and we're seeing some of the easing of those restrictions that were there from before. We're planning to move forward with the annual meeting as we normally would. So as we had back in 2019, a quorum of members from the Village Council, Decatur Township Board, and Hamilton Township Board would need to be in attendance to approve the resolutions and authorize the millages, as well as approve the final fiscal year 22 budgets for QR and fire in the fire department. Excuse me. Attached to the insert here would be the draft budgets for the QR and fire department. I think there may be a couple minor changes that come in from what you're seeing here. I think QR had a few supplies and equipment things that they just sent to me recently, and the fire board was looking at one other equipment purchase that was a possibility, but we wanted to try to get these out for everybody to take a look at in advance as much as we could. So that's what you have there in front of you. If anybody has any questions on those, I can answer those for you. I'm the one that As you guys know, I'm the treasurer and secretary of the QR and fire board, so I prepared those, so I have a good idea of what we're looking at there. One thing I guess I will touch on that's a little bit different this year, for illustrative purposes for all of the municipalities. Last year we moved to a little bit different budget style, and we detailed the fund balances for the beginning of the year and end of the year. One of the challenges that comes with looking at fund balance numbers is, much like with the village, depending on what department you're talking about, fund balance may not necessarily be cash on hand. It could include equipment, it could include prepaid insurance, things like that, where there really isn't an amount that you can spend. So what we moved to this year, for both the QR and fire department, at the very bottom is unassigned fund balance. So that gives you a really true metric of what we're expecting to be in terms of the cash and liquid assets that would be available for expenditure on items. Overall, the quick response budget is fairly similar to what it was for this year, with minor adjustments to a few things. I think looking at it, we increased the budget for building repairs slightly. Insurance was reduced to kind of accommodate the fact that there were some changes there. Equipment and supplies stays about the same. So there's really not much of a difference from last fiscal year to this fiscal year. Revenues are adjusted slightly, mostly because we realized there was an increase in revenues from Hamilton year over year and a decrease in Decatur Township, so we've accounted for those things. The fire department budget is, of course, a bit more complex. As you can see here, the amended budget for fiscal year 21. We'll discuss this in more detail at the annual meeting. There will be some budget amendments that are required. I wanted to touch on one thing here, is that we had been very conservative with the budget process for QR and fire going into last year. There was a lot of uncertainty at that point with the impact COVID-19 might have. And with that, there was some additional equipment purchases and things along those lines that we thought might be possible, but it was really difficult to kind of forecast what we might see in terms of some of those costs. And one of the big items that we're going to look at is there was some significant vehicle repairs costs that we hadn't anticipated. We've adjusted the budget for this year, or the upcoming year, the proposed budget, to accommodate some additional repairs and hopefully address some of those concerns. I know that there is some repairs that are needed to the grass rig, some springs and tires and a few other issues they had. And then we've tried to account for an increase in repairs overall. It's kind of one of those scenarios where, as equipment begins to age, the cost of repairing that equipment and maintaining that equipment tends to increase. So we've tried to set the budget at what we've seen as an average of costs over the last few years. The other items that changed, one of the big ones would be turnout gear. I know that looks like a pretty sizable amount, but the air bottles that are used by the department have reached their end of life at the end of this year, so we do have to replace all of those. Those alone carry a cost of, I believe it was approximately $29,000. Salaries changes a little bit, as they now have a hourly paid department secretary. I can tell you that there's been a lot of work going into trying to clean up some things and making sure the department is running properly, and so I think that cost has been helpful. So that's one of the other ones. And then I think under capital outlay, they are looking at procuring a battery-powered Jaws of Life. They have a set now, but with the battery-powered ones, that gives them more flexibility, especially when you're looking at things that might be out in a field area or farm equipment, things along those lines. And then that actually could be something they could use with the new UTV that they have, as well as some of the other equipment where they might be out in the middle of a field somewhere that might make it impractical to get our existing equipment out there. So as you can see with the unassigned fund balance, even with what we're projecting there, we're not projecting a huge expenditure out of the fund balance. The total unassigned fund balance would be somewhere in the ballpark. Of course, we still have one more month yet, so That might not be 100% accurate, but about 682,000. And then I guess the final thing I want to touch on is there will be some budget amendments that the municipalities will look at the end of the year here. My guess is it's probably going to be somewhere on the order of about 39 to 40,000. The biggest portion of that was in vehicle repairs, and I think that was really the biggest component. It was about 30,000 or so of increased costs that came out of a couple different things there, a few different repairs that had to be completed. But the important thing I think is that when you look at the projected budget for even this year, even taking those repairs into account, it'll still be in addition to the fund balance to the department of roughly somewhere in the ballpark of about 50 to 60,000. So it's not like any of the costs that we're looking at for budget amendments overspent the department budget to a point where on the year we're looking at something that was outside of a balanced budget. The budget's still balanced. It's just, I think, with some of the operating supplies and things as well, we had anticipated, I think there was 2 or 3 new members we had planned on, and I think we've now got 5 or 6. But the equipment to outfit those members and things along those lines also cost some money. So the department saw some increased costs, but I think the costs that were there that increased were justifiable and made sense. And we'll get into that more at the annual meeting, but just at least a broad overview for you.
A question.
Sure.
I see the salaries, you said that it went from 21 to 36. What's that about?
Yeah, the department secretary, they initially had thought about some sort of an annual amount, and I relayed feedback from the village that we didn't feel that an annual salary of sorts was in the best interest of the department. So the decision that the fire board ultimately made was to approve an hourly amount. So the department secretary now has to keep track of all of her hours. And then she submits those hours that are verified with the fire chief, the chairman of the board, and then Fred's office and me review those before they would be paid. I believe it is $18 an hour is how that works. My best guess would be is that with some of the work that's gone into catching things up, I guess is maybe a good way to put it, over the last couple of months, we'll probably see an increase in those costs for this last month and probably this month, maybe one additional month, and then you'll probably see things settle back down to where you're seeing a normal amount of hours. It's a significant change from what I think they've done in the past, but the way that the fire board looked at it was that there was enough work that was required on the part of the department secretary that trying to pay a quarterly amount or something was not necessarily feasible, and they wanted to really try to have that secretary person, whoever was completing that role, do a lot more and be required to do a lot more, saying that if you're an employee of the department, we're going to expect A, B, C, and D out of you, and this is one way to be able to do that. So that's the reason I think for the increase. I mean, my best guess was probably somewhere on the ballpark of about maybe 10, 11,000 over the course of the year. I think that it would have normally have been paid roughly.
The question I'm asking is just the delta between 21 and 36,000, and I just went at 15,000. Is there like a part-time? How many hours? Is there hours required?
It's basically.
If you're gonna have somebody, you're gonna say you're gonna work 1,000 hours a year.
It's not. It's a bit open-ended. They don't require. They hadn't set a lower limit or an upper limit per se. So
somebody
it's
could
not.
work $100 and make $15,000 a year.
Yeah, it's not set to a point where it's saying you have to work, 40 hours a month, or you can work no more than 80 hours a month or something. Basically, they just set an hourly rate and said, okay, well, we're going to pay $18 an hour for the work that gets completed here, and we want a time card completed every month. You turn in what your hours were, the fire chief will take a look at that and verify that those hours were done, and then we want to see what work did you complete in that time. So it's quite a change from what there was before. Quite frankly, it's possible that with the 36 amount, that might be higher than what was necessary, but since we haven't really gone through this yet, it's hard for me to know exactly what we're gonna see. I mean, the best guess would be is that I think there was about 68 hours last month that were turned in, but we think that will probably come down to maybe the 20 to 25 range now that things are getting caught back up. And you know, for ongoing hourly work, it's not going to be something where you're gonna see, you know, 100 hours a month or something like that.
Any questions from the council?
I got a question on that grass rig. You said that springs and tires?
I believe that's what they were saying, was there were springs that were a problem, and maybe it wasn't tires. I know there were springs that were an issue.
And we're just now hearing about a safety issue. I mean, where is our village representative? I mean, we gotta find a new village representative? Because that's a safety issue. I'd like to know about that before.
I think they said that, you know, they had felt that with what they had, it was something where they were able to make it through this last season, but they didn't want to carry it out any longer. That I think when they took it to Krogel's, he said, well, you know, these springs are starting to get to a point where they may go here at some point. So, and I think it was something along the lines of with the weight. They wanted to get some sort of a different spring that would carry the weight of that a little bit better. I think maybe with the handling of the rig and with the water and stuff that's on there, that they thought an upgrade there could potentially make the vehicle more useful.
Well, I just wish.
But no, it's a good point.
I mean, if we have to, I mean, we might have to consider getting a new representative, because obviously we're not being told what's going on.
Yeah, you know, and I think this came up, the fire board itself, I think, talked about this. It's about 3 or 4 months ago. They just started to get quotes and figure out what it was. You know, they had basically said that one of their concerns was taking it out of service during the heart of the season where they would normally use the grass rig. I mean, I guess I don't know if it, I'm not really very well aware of what seasons there are for those things.
Well,
I know the grass seems really dry right now.
Any more questions?
I do have a question.
Sure.
So, our newest truck seems to be out of service a lot, so do you know from a percentage perspective or a dollar amount, how much of the repairs are being done on the newest truck?
To my knowledge, all of the repair work that has been done on that was all covered under warranty. I don't believe that there was anything that was done on the new truck that cost us. I think there was maybe one annual tune-up of some sort that may have been a cost, but it wasn't. It was like $1,200 or something along those lines. I could be wrong though. I'd have to go back and double check.
I guess what I would like to see, and I don't know if you have this put together, if you could put it together, is a spreadsheet of all of the vehicles and the maintenance and repairs that are being done, so we can look at them. Because I can tell from this budget, at some point they're gonna be saying we need a new truck. And I really wanna be able to justify, do we really need a new truck?
Mhm.
Because the older the trucks are, probably the better made they are. So are we buying junk thinking we're replacing junk, and we're really not?
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, I don't know if this may be discussed at the annual meeting. You know, one thing that they've talked about is with ISO ratings. One of the trucks, I think, has lost its Class A status because of the age. So ISO ratings might potentially go down a little bit, and that could have an impact.
I would recommend talking to Jeff Moses, because that's not true.
But, I mean, and again, a lot of what I guess I'm quoting is just what I've heard discussed at the fire board. I'm definitely not a firefighter, and I am not necessarily an expert. So I think these are all great questions that should be.
It's unfortunate, but I think some of those questions that are coming to you are because some of the things that you're hearing don't necessarily.
No, and I think
So.
I think, you know, and I think, you know, Chairman Druskovich and you know, Vice Chairman Newell. I mean, I think all of us would say that, you know, for a lot of these concerns that get brought up, I mean, I think certainly bring it to the annual meeting. And you know, I think, I guess the way that I look at it is that, you know, the fire board does our best to try to make sure the department has the equipment, the tools, and the training necessary to keep the community safe from fires. But most of us are not experts when it comes to firefighting. But by all means, if there are questions about whether we should buy this piece of equipment or whether that makes sense. I mean, I think that the annual meeting is a great place to ask the department itself, explain these, you know, and I think I mentioned it at last month's meeting that, you know, more than likely, when you're looking at budget increases and budget amendments, you're going to be required to answer some questions. Why did this happen or why did that happen? So be prepared.
There's no more questions, move on to the next item, which is 413 West Delaware.
Yes, so we just received, or not just received, I think it was last month, we received an application for a marijuana micro business to be located at 413 West Delaware Street. I was hoping to get it in the agenda before today, but the planning commission wasn't able to meet until 3 o'clock this afternoon. So I didn't want to be presumptuous with the application or with the agenda item. So we ran everything through the planning commission first, and then I created this after the meeting. So the planning commission held a public hearing on a special land use permit for the property at 413 West Delaware, as well as entertaining a recommendation for the approval of the facility. As you can see in the special land use application that we attached there, the plan for the property would be to demolish the existing structure, which is the old laundromat there, and build a new retail facility. If you've been over to the property there, the existing structure that was the laundromat is really not in good shape. I think that's probably a major driver as to why the location is still not open for business at this point. The prior owner, I believe, had planned to complete renovations based on some signage we saw in the windows, but it doesn't look like that was ever completed, and my best guess is it probably became cost prohibitive for the business to do so. So as such, this proposed facility would remove that derelict building, result in new construction, and would plan to employ 4 to 6 new full-time jobs once the business opened. With the approval of the special land use permit by the Planning Commission, they also recommended that the Village Council approve the MRTMA application. After reviewing everything here, I don't see any hindrance to the Village Council going forward with that. Tim and I looked through the application, and we do have everything we need there. And all applicable application fees have been paid as well.
Okay, if there's no questions, a motion to approve that, since the planning commission already, recommended that, we have a motion to approve the MRTMA facility application for 14 West Delaware.
I'll make that motion to approve the MRTMA facility application for 413 West Delaware as presented.
I'll second that.
We need roll call, please.
Trustee Benson, trustee Gunther.
Yes.
Pro Tem Jackson.
Yes.
Trustee Mead,
Yes.
trustee Pelfrey,
Yes.
trustee Brand, Hour.
Yes, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is executive search service. Management will be giving us by August 31st. So we need to discuss this. I didn't want to have a special meeting, so I decided this to talk about it tonight. This meeting says we're going to come back and talk about it next week or so. So we need to figure out what we're going to do. I did a little research, and I tell you my research that most places when they will find somebody for you, the cost about 30% of the first year of the candidate or for village manager. So they charge $18,000, $19,000, but we don't want to spend that much money. Basically, I just want to make sure that we discuss these things. I reached to another individual, somebody I know who does this for, now they have a business, they do this. And this individual helped us before, and he said he would do it for us for $4,000. So to do all the work, do the search for us to bring us a manager by the time, I think, that when his time's up. So if the council is okay with this, so I want to make sure that everybody's on board. I would, we have this individual, which is, I think, he did this for us before. And I think he's doing us in a way, helping us as an indicator because he did it for us before. It's Mr. Frank Walsh. he does this actually he does this now he has a business to do this, so does it for other places. So I gave him a call today and he said it's about $4,000 we do for the year. And I don't know what you think about this, what the council thinks. And the council think it's okay for us to move on with it?
I think it'd be a good idea.
Okay.
I mean, normally, if you're talking $18,000 and we can get somebody to do it for $4, that's
Do you know,
huge.
he doesn't charge really,
Yeah.
he charges, he charges a lot less than what he usually does.
Right.
Hopefully I don't create problems.
I think we should have them help us out.
Okay, so I'll give him a call and then we'll start the process then. Do we need a motion for this?
I think so, you're spending money,
Yeah.
your roll call.
Okay, so I'm gonna contact Frank Walsh and ask him to help us find us a manager.
Have someone move that with the
Yeah.
4,000.
Yeah, he told me he would do it for $4,000.
So what does he do? Who exactly, I know his name, and I'm really still looking for manager, what his qualifications, I guess. for finding
He
a
does
job.
this, for other places.
A living?
Yeah, he does the search for.
He has the credentials to find someone, I mean,
He runs a consulting service. He's actually currently the township supervisor for Meridian Township near Lansing. I know he's done this exact same thing for the village in the past. I see it a lot with the municipal executives group where he's actively involved in, I think, in the last year, I think 5 or 6 different municipal searches of this same, nature. Some were communities the size of Decatur, some were, up to, 30, 40,000 resident size communities. So it's something where I think his firm has specialized in these sorts of municipal searches for quite some time.
So,
I can make the motion if you want. I'll make a motion that we engage Frank Walsh to do an executive search to fill the manager position at a cost of $4,000.
I'll second that.
okay, trustee Jackson, trustee Mead, roll call please.
Trustee Benson, trustee Gunther,
Yes.
Pro Tem Jackson,
Yes.
trustee Mead,
Yes.
trustee Pelfrey,
yes.
trustee Brand, and President Howard.
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is public comments. Any public comments? Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to give another perspective maybe for the DPW team leader. I think that's a good idea. And there has seemed to be quite a bit of turnover. But I wanted you to try to reconsider, instead of 50 cents an hour, make it $1. If you go to any factory, the team leaders get at least $1 an hour. And if we want to keep turning over help, we won't pay them what they should get. I think that the DPW guys work really hard, and a lot of times in inclement weather, and I know they've gotten a raise, but I don't think they're at the pay scale they should be at.
I'm not opposed to that personally, but leave it up to the manager. What did we say, the 50 cents? Maybe, I don't know.
We didn't agree on that.
We
just
don't agree on anything,
the
so-
position, so.
Okay.
Just a position, so you could,
Okay,
I think that would be a good idea.
sounds good to me.
Everybody, anybody else? Okay, if there is any council comments, Mr. Mead?
No, I have
Thanks, Matt. I'm sure we'll still do a lot of work with you, but
Yes.
congratulations.
Thank you.
on your new endeavors.
Thank you, Mayor, I appreciate all this work you did for us. And I appreciate that you're staying until August 31st so you can help us out, and I think that's a good thing to do. Because I know there's a lot of projects need to be done and taken care of.
We'll be hard at work making sure those
I
things get
appreciate
done.
it, and I appreciate it too if you help us when we need you after that.
Yeah, I'm still gonna live right here, so yeah, if you guys need help, just call me and I'll make myself available.
I'm gonna hold on to see that, just let you know.
I'm aware.
Whenever you, okay, last thing, we need a motion to adjourn, please.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Any second?
I'll support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hold on, motion carries. Thank you, Ray.
Everybody.
This is for you.